I now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Comer from Kentucky, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank each of the witnesses for being here today. As I've said from the beginning, discovering the origins of COVID-19 is vital to both the public health and national security of the United States. Former CDC Director Redfield testified last month that this is not simply a scientific question, but also one of intelligence. And I agree with that. And we need to ensure the intelligence is accurate and truthful. On March 17, 2020, one of the most influential papers of all time was published in the scientific journal Nature Medicine, entitled The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2. It was prompted by Dr. Fauci and written to suppress the lab leak hypothesis. This paper stated that no type of lab-based scenario is possible. Director Ratliff, is that factual?
It is not.
Mr. Feith, to you, is that statement factual?
Based on my understanding, no.
10 days later, on March 26th, the State Department produced a memo that stated U.S. scientists assessed the virus emerged naturally. It continued to say a lab leak was improbable and not supported by the available evidence. Director Ratliff, are those statements factual?
They are not.
Mr. Feith, to you, are those statements factual?
No, they were at best overstated.
Mr. Feith, you were involved in the briefing that produced that memo?
I was a recipient of the briefing that the memo is an account of.
So while serving at the State Department investigating the origins of COVID-19, were you ever briefed by an author of the proximal origin paper?
Yes, sir.
During the preparation of that memo, which I referenced above, do you believe the unnamed scientist had apparent conflicts of interest?
In short, yes, especially based on what we know since then about them.
Were the authors, were they the ones that were briefing the intelligence community, the authors of that?
So that document is a write-up of a so-called analytic exchange that had been hosted by the State Department's Intelligence and Research Bureau that day or the day before, including a number of U.S. scientists who were briefing a range of policymakers from across the interagency.
So that the authors were on the conference call with Dr. Fauci on February 1st, 2020, where they almost universally said COVID-19 may have come from a lab.
That actually I'm not sure of, and there's a little bit of a difficulty in identifying exactly who was part of that State Department briefing just because of the rules that we were subject to.
Okay. Director Ratliff, once you became director, did Dr. Fauci relay any of these concerns to you?
He
that
didn't.
May have come from a lab?
He did not.
And why do you think he did not?
Well, that would I would obviously have to speculate, but I would point you to Dr. Fauci being perhaps the best person to answer that, and there is publicly available under information that has been obtained through open sources and freedom of information, where Dr. Fauci and other virologists and scientists talk about the fact that it would bring unwanted attention to funding sources and the research that was taking place using funding sources, domestic funding sources from the United States, and the relationship of certain Western scientists with scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where unsafe coronavirus research was taking place in labs that did not have appropriate biosafety levels and precautions, as had been reported.
Oh, this is so bad. It just gets worse every day. These scientists flipped 180 degrees with no new evidence, produced a paper not based on facts, and then may have used that paper to brief the intelligence community and suppress the lab leak hypothesis. This is a how-to manual in orchestrating a cover-up by using some of the most powerful and influential institutions in our country. If you ask me, this was set in motion by Dr. Fauci to hide U.S. funding of gain-of-function research and dodge accountability for a virus that has killed more than 1 million Americans. This must be investigated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
I now recognize Mr. Mafumbe from Maryland for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you very much, Chair Winstrup, and my thanks also to Ranking